Now.
So the idea is that sorry, I just lost my
screwed.
It's like it's funny. Security net.
Welcome back, everyone, to this edition of Security Weekly, which is brought to you by Black Hills Information Security, the leaders in penetration testing and active defense. Email consulting at blackhillsinfosec.com to request a quote today. And by the SANS Institute, the most trusted source for computer security training, certification, and research. Visit SANS.org to learn more. Be sure to check out Paul and John's new class, SANS 550, Active Defense, Offensive Countermeasures, and Cyber Deception. Accept no active defense training substitutes. And by Tenable Network Security, the creators of Nessus, the world's best vulnerability scanner. Jumpstart your security program today and evaluate Security Center's CV, the continuous monitoring solution. Visit Tenable.com for more information. Oh, and we have Hack Naked stuff, which we sell on our website, shop.securityweekly.com. And listeners receive 10% off products in our store with the discount code IHackNaked, which now include Hack Naked stickers. Larry is teaching SANS 617 Wireless Ethical Hacking and Defense coming up in Baltimore, Maryland, June 13th through the 20th, Berlin, Germany, June 22nd through the 27th, and lots more places, so be sure to check out the SANS website for more course offerings. What is that? That is Baltimore. That is horrible.
Yeah, well, that is Baltimore
That
lately.
is Baltimore right now.
I missed it. Was it a picture of a riot?
Right,
Nice.
yeah.
Nice.
All right, yeah.
Coming to a SANS conference near you.
I have a story
Good
on
luck
that.
in- good
no,
luck
I
in
have a
Baltimore.
story on riot control. Should we? All right.
Cut to the story on riot control.
Oh my
Straight to the
God!
story.
All right, we're going to start there. This is the story is stink bomb. This was on Schneier on security, by the way. I didn't just find this randomly somewhere. Stink bombs for riot control. It's called skunk, a type of malodorant. Malodorant.
Yep.
Just like your armpits.
A malodorant, like deodorant, but malodorant in plain language, a foul-smelling liquid. Technically non-toxic, but incredibly disgusting. I know some people like that.
It's been described as a cross between dead animal and human excrement.
Yes, that's like dead animal aroma with human excrement aroma together. That's
Somebody
special.
Somebody just said
So anybody
just
that's
like
been
your
to
armpits.
DEF CON is immune.
Yeah,
It sounds like the streets of San Francisco #2.
Yes, it does.
definitely you've been to DEF CON.
It
you're
says
immune.
the smell will linger for weeks,
Untreated.
untreated. But there is
So there's
a special soap.
so it's an improvement to
Yeah.
the Inner Harbor.
But so the Israelis first used this in 2008 to disperse Palestinians protesting. It said it can be neutralized with a special soap and only with that special soap. So
Wow.
I can see some bargaining going on. I'll be like, oh, dude, you reek. I got the solution for that, but it's going to cost you
yeah.
$500.
You know what? A BBC video shows its first use in action, sprayed by a hose, a system that has become known as the crap cannon.
Yes.
Wow.
Is
I
there?
have a toddler, also known as the crap cannon.
That's right. That's epic.
After I eat Taco Bell, I'm known as.
The crap cannon.
So, aren't you glad we started here, Trey? Mr. Trey Ford is here in studio. Welcome,
shit.
Trey.
Hi.
It's nice to have the dreamy Trey Ford sitting right next to me.
The Dreamy. Wait, how does he get that title?
Because he's dreamy.
look at
Haven't
him.
you looked at him? You have to ask that,
I have
Joff?
not gazed deep into Trey's eyes.
Well, it's dreamy.
You resisted, Joff.
I have
Be
resisted.
careful. You might want to take your
stop.
clothes off.
Look away. Look away. Well, I don't know. G'day, love. How are you? Worked pretty well for me
Mr. Jack,
last night. Eh?
Mr. Jack Daniel is here as well. Jack, welcome.
What? Huh? Oh, right. Hi.
He's old, confused. He's drinking.
I have booze
Jack,
now.
what was this
Jack-
cocktail that you made me?
That's sort of a Martinez. We don't have quite the right ingredients, so it took
It's
a little
really good.
balancing to balance some dry gin with some Genever
You balanced well.
to come up with something
awesome.
kind of like an Old Tom gin, which a little drier, a little less sweet than a Genever, and didn't have quite the right bitters, but a blend of the right bitters came pretty good.
It's a Martino-ez.
It's a Martinez, yes.
We're all just sitting
Very,
here thinking
very close-
whatever he said, and it tastes
close
good.
to that. And
It's a dirty Martinez. Is that
yeah, you know,
is
yes.
that like the cousin
No,
of the Dirty Sanchez?
no. Larry and Trey are enjoying Sazeracs, and I'm having something involving a lot of Jack Daniels and not much else.
Wow.
Hey, I drove down from downtown Boston through Boston traffic, through Providence traffic here. I kind of just emptied a bottle of Jack Daniels into a glass and then decided I'd put a lemon peel in it to make it look like sophisticated and shit.
Jack,
and he-
Jack Daniel is drinking a
Yeah.
bottle of Jack
Because you
Daniels,
guys like aren't
which
right
is in
from
fact
that drive.
illegal
Like
in
you guys
48
are not
states.
right.
It was a long drive.
It was
Pretty
a
intense.
pretty savage drive. By the way, there's a whole pile of things that are empty on the floor there that need to be restocked.
I gotcha. Bitters too, huh? Was that why you said you didn't have the right bitters? We ran out
Yeah,
of bitters.
there's some Angostura, but there's one small bottle, but there was an empty small
You
bottle
really
there.
did empty out that bottle of Jack Daniels. That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
It was
Hey,
kind
so-
of amazing watching him work. I mean, he's sitting there smelling, trying to. It was amazing.
It's artist in residence.
It really
you know,
was.
and it's fantastic. Look, while we're talking about drinking, do you mind if I do a brief segue to Boston this week?
Yeah.
And some of the listeners might remember that we on episode 415, I believe it was, we had Apollo. I think it was 415. Had Apollo Clark on a web app guy, and Apollo gave us some really cool recipes. That are in our wiki on the recipe, and each one of them is by our names. There's the Bad Acidorian and Joff me off, Dirty Vesper, and Harry Larry. Well, anyway, I'm going to try to make this quick. I'm in Boston this week, and I made friends with Renee. So big shout out to Renee.
Hi, Renee.
She's a bartender at the Marriott in Boston on Tremont Street. And Renee has agreed to accept these drinks into her list and also
Dude,
spread
she
them.
loved these. She was all
She
excited.
was really very, very excited. And she also agreed to talk to some other bartender friends, I believe, at the Times. Maybe not there. But anyway, we're going to have some of our drinks.
It's Joff's mission, dude. He tries.
And
to
I
get,
did say it was my mission, so I think I've succeeded.
Yes, I think you
So
have
I'm very
too.
excited by that. So there we go. That's the brief segue about drinks.
We could go on where the evening went from there, but
Well, no, that's not
Yes,
PG,
that's
and this is
not.
a family show
No, this
after
is a
all.
show. Yes.
Yeah.
it didn't.
It's
it
a
went
family
downhill.
show. It gets you in a family
is?
way if you listen to it too long. But
Anyway, very excited by that. So, cheers to Boston.
So, Trey, I wanted to ask you. So, you've never been on the show before?
I've never been on the show.
You've never been on the show. Okay, well, let's first start
man,
with.
he's popping the Paul Security Weekly cherry.
You could say that.
Wow.
Wow.
He looked a little uncomfortable.
He does now.
looked a little uncomfortable.
But I feel better now.
Well, that's good. That's good. It only hurts the first time.
Yeah.
Didn't hurt much.
Just like in prison, Trey. It only hurts the first time.
Oh, dear.
Wow.
But make sure you keep
So-
a respectable distance from your drink to the laptop. Because we've had,
Yeah, keep your drink away from my laptop.
We've had some challenges there.
We've
in the
done
past.
research on the drink tolerance of MacBooks, and
It's not
it
good.
doesn't work
Doesn't
out.
look
It's
much past
not pretty.
Lightweight.
Yeah, it's pretty
So-
bad when the smoke
Trey,
gets out.
how did you get your start in information security?
Oh dear, slid under a lucky star. I don't know that any of us started off heading in this direction. We kind of stumbled into it. I guess the first point I was doing any real security work, I had taken a job at ADT Security back in Kansas City where I grew up, handling alarm systems when the alarms would go off. So inbound alerts, outbound phone calls, or inbound, hey, my alarm's going off, what's happening? So triaging that. I was the guy that RTFM'd. I read the manuals, and when they had an alarm system they couldn't disarm, I was talking them through factory reset, like pissed off the techs because they had to reprogram everything. But that's kind of how I got my taste of, okay, layers of authorization, like the idea of authentication, managing that, communication, staying calm, that kind of stuff. And after building a IT consultancy, small little consulting thing in Kansas City, went to work for Fishnet, and that's where I came in.
Nice.
And Fish Yvonne.
AccuFish. Where's AccuFish?
Only for a
I
couple
like
more weeks, right?
It's like
better,
a
I
fish
think.
finder, but yeah,
I was going to say, because if anybody wants the Fish Yvonne domain name, I'll sell it to the highest bidder.
handy. Handy.
Well, they're merging and changing their names soon, right? Starts with an O. I should
Oh,
remember.
what was it?
Yeah.
Must not be. Oh,
It's
If you
another
can't
one of those
remember,
that's like,
damn.
wait, we have two names we know really well, so let's change to something nobody can remember.
What did they call it?
Yeah.
Excellent marketing right there.
Yeah, it's
wait. So I'm not done with you, Trey.
That's what
You
she
thought
said.
you thought you were finished.
You thought
but
you
no.
were done, right?
I was attempting, but
Yes.
you can't fade away when you're anchored.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have that dreamy look, apparently.
I'm not a piece
So
of
you-
meat. I have feelings.
And you work today for the fast number between after 6 thing.
You know, I have the privilege of working at Rapid 7. It's an amazing place.
It's awesome.
Great
Paul,
team.
Paul can't bring himself to say that word.
My cousin works there too,
Yeah.
and a lot of other people that I am friendly with or am becoming friendly with.
becoming
Josh,
friendly
oh,
is
Josh,
irrelevant.
beco-
Resistance is futile.
Yeah, it sucked me into the vortex.
Josh is a good dude.
Josh is a good dude at Storm. At
Jen is awesome.
Yeah, both.
Jen is
Well, I didn't
phenomenal.
see Jen
Yeah.
at Source, but I saw them both at B-Sides. We chatted briefly, and Josh and we were talking at
Custos.
Source. So
That HD Moore dude, he's all right.
yeah, he's all right.
He's all right. I stole his office when I moved to Austin. His wife, I think, is trying to kill me actively. She wants him out of the house, back to the office. I think.
yeah.
No, I'm a dead man walking.
Yeah,
And she is scary smart. Oh my goodness.
I hear
funny.
she's really good with a shotgun, too, so you better be careful.
I don't think she needs a shotgun, dude.
I don't think
know,
so
like,
either, but I
the-
hear she's really good with one.
I think
don't
when you
doubt
live
that.
in Texas, that just it goes without saying.
Yes, sir.
So, what was I going to... Oh, I heard someone use metasploit as a verb. Is that... I don't really...
Metasploit as a verb.
Yeah, metasploit is a verb. Like, they metasploited it. You metasploit it. I'm like, I don't like using it as a verb.
I still
don't
like
like hearing it using it as a
I
verb.
still like Stallone better.
Stallone.
Still on.
I mean, the achy breaky hair mistake, he should never die. Stallone works.
So you're working on stuff now with Congress and stuff, right? You're still doing that whole initiative.
Mm-hmm.
And what is that initiative about?
So when I came on to Rapid 7, I just departed Black Hat, kind of a sudden departure. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I talked to a whole bunch of companies in a matter of weeks.
Oh, yeah. It used to be my crying shoulder. I used to go complain to you. Everything about Black... Trey, wah! And Trey'd be like, it's okay, Paul. We'll fix it.
You
And
forget how
we'd
much
fix
we
it.
actually spoke.
That's true.
Yeah, so in departing Black Hat, what I was trying to sort out was what I could do that would be, I don't know, continuing what I cared most about working with the community was, protecting research, protecting the dialogue. It's really funny. Jen used this line, and it worked very well. You hear this at the airport. If you see something, say something. Turns out you can do that just about anywhere, pointing something out that's not quite right, except the internet. Turns out, yeah.
You can, but
Well, you can, but
things
then
go
you're a
badly.
troll.
Well, then you're making friends, and we're not going to rehash that episode.
That's true. Yeah.
So, no, it's a thing. And it's, I think it's a conversation that needs to be made more accessible. I think talking about vulnerabilities, talking about things we've found, it's a two-way street, and it's part of our job to step up how we communicate and how we partner. Anyway, so the DC thing, Jen and the rest of the Rapid 7 team, the leadership, they care very much about the community, what we're doing, keeping it legal, protecting the future of what's happening. And so we've been working hard with a group of folks on simply educating and informing DC decision makers, different groups, on the plight of research and how very dangerous it is to actually raise your head and say something, the liability that you accept, and how certain interpretations of law, certain, prosecutor discretion in certain pieces of law affect us. So we're working hard on that.
I want to ask you, there's a lot that has led up to what's in the headlines today,
Oh, dear,
obviously.
yes. Oh,
but
dear, yes.
Since it's timely, yeah, you just sank. It's okay.
Oh, he's got my chair.
You got the trick chair.
Congratulations.
No, we got a couple
I
of
do
them,
that
'cause I've
so
got
I
one of
feel
those.
superior to my guests, so they just
I have
sing
one of
it
those
before
too.
me.
There you go.
But in the news this week, changes to export control arrangement apply to computer security.
Wassenaar.
The Wassenaar
yes,
agreement?
the Wassenaar arrangement.
The
yes.
Wassenaar arrangement.
So it placed 0 days, other computer exploits, and potentially more
Don't
categories
lean
of
back.
software under this multilateral
Push the pin
export
in.
control regime. Will you stop futzing it with your chair and pay
You gotta
attention to me?
push the pin.
I'm trying to
in.
listen. Here, I'll sit here and just focus on you.
what
That
is
makes
that?
you more comfortable. You
No,
got it.
now I just want to take my clothes off.
Like that's ever stopped you before.
Paul, look away from the eyes. Look away from the eyes.
That's a constant thing with me, I guess. But
That's
I'm
where
gonna
your
need
kids
another
get
one
it from.
oh my God. I'm glad that I've lost control of the episode because
Already?
I'm surprised that it took that long, actually, to lose control of the episode. So, what is this latest law that may put 0 days and other computer exploits into possible regulation?
So the discussion about this is tied to dual-use technologies, and they're placing exploits and proof-of-concept code into that. It's a scary conversation. This just came in. I think there was a 60-day window to respond to that, so we're working on coordinating a response to that. I believe we have an email active, Twitter at rapid7.com, where we're going to be pulling people in to have that discussion.
Excellent. Any other questions for Trey related to anything?
Yeah, I have a question from the audience. One, Mr. James
Jamie.
Arlen
All
has
right.
asked for the name of his stylist because Mercurial would like a makeover.
You know, I get my hair cut at Great Clips. $9.
Wow.
Sorry, Jamie.
And you too can go to Great Clips and spend only $9 and look this fabulous.
They get very excited when you don't give them your phone number or email. I don't understand that.
What is
That's a whole
this?
different thing.
What is this weird haircut concept? I don't get it.
Weird haircut concept.
Yeah.
Jeff said 'cause he doesn't have hair.
Here's a legitimate question from Jamie for you.
All right.
Okay. Follow up.
Audience question number 2. What is he doing about the GTP, glorified tool punk culture these days? Seriously.
What is the glorified? I think I know what that means.
Self-explanatory, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a catchphrase that was floating around for a while that I wasn't a huge fan of. And so the glorified tool punk thing is this notion that, in a day not so long ago, it took a lot more than spinning up Kali for backtrack and popping shells on machines. You had to know a whole lot more. And, it's interesting. I think folks of, I would say my generation and your generation, but that sounds disrespectful, but I guess I did.
Wait, are we in different generations?
I don't know. How old are you?
Talking
I'm
about
38.
my
How old are you?
generations.
Yeah, I'm 35 now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're the same generation.
generation.
Same generation.
Hey, you guys are getting old.
This is
We're old now.
This is in fact the Oregon Trail generation.
Yes, yes.
I mean,
I like
Jack,
that.
I think,
I
is the
subscribe
only
to
one
that.
that's outside of the generation.
Yeah, no, Jack is in the Oregon Trail generation, but it's the different Oregon Trail.
It's not the computer game.
It's the actual Oregon Trail generation.
That's why he enjoys driving to Vegas every year.
You know,
It's
that's
just
where I
fun.
learned the
generation am I
bartending
in?
skills. You know, you don't have a lot to work with out of those kind
That's
of
right
stogas.
before we
That's why-
took over the land from the Indians.
That's
That was
right.
that
That's why,
trail.
that's why Jack is a master of the classics, because he's been making them for
that's
100 plus
that.
years.
I remember hanging out at the bar, learning from Jerry Thomas himself. You know,
Wow.
So where were we?
Wow,
let's
what
see.
question were we asking?
Jan-
That was the GTP.
GTP.
Yeah, the general, what is
Glorified
it? Glorified
tool
tool punk, yeah. I think it's interesting because we have a new generation of security folks coming in, and they've been using tools. They haven't been proper IT. I wonder how many of them have actually worked a help desk job. I'm fairly confident most of us did. So I think what he's jumping straight to is like, look, I popped all these shells, and they haven't fought on the other side of the line. They haven't spent as much time trying to clean this up. I think a lot of the advice that we give folks as pen testers and offensive security-minded folk isn't always tenable. It's untenable. And what we're trying to achieve is, hey, look, like, your shit's broke, fix it. There's a lot more to it.
You said something very interesting. I find that too, that us older folk, I guess, are we older folk now?
Oh, come on.
You're even older than I am.
You realize that was Inception. That just
No,
happened.
actually, I just turned 29.
And Jack is sitting over there laughing his ass off.
Yeah.
I don't remember why I'm laughing, but that's it.
So us older
Young
folks, though,
whippersnappers.
we've worked other jobs in IT.
Echo.
Apparently not in audio engineering. But
And Chris just steps away.
Chris just steps away, and
Apparently
yes,
it's gone. He fixed
okay. So, but we've worked other jobs in IT,
Right.
which somehow has given us a deeper appreciation or understanding of what we do in security. Is
Right.
that really true? And how do we steer the newer generation coming in to not just say, well, I want to do security, I want to be cool, I want to be a hacker.
Right.
To say, well, I always told people, and I still tell people to say, well, to do that, you got to go be a sysadmin, go work on the help desk,
think
or
so.
go be a network engineer first. Experience what life is like on the other side of the fence, as you said, and then come back. Does that still hold true today, or is
I believe it does. I think it's still great advice. We work for companies that, of a suite of products, both provide vulnerability management and information tied to that. How many of us have seen and personally done a vuln scan and threw it over the fence to IT? We threw a rock in the pond and just ignored the fact that there's waves and all kinds of things crashing around afterwards. There's a whole lot of work that goes into it. I remember some of my first gigs as an auditor back at Fishnet. I'd go on site, and I knew the best practices. I'd studied all this stuff. I understood what we were trying to achieve with these control objectives and this sort of thing. Yeah, it turns out these guys have been doing IT longer than I've been out living on the planet. They're not stupid, and they've arrived at the processes and the controls they're using today because they work. And after I got past that, okay, whippersnapper, I'm going to take you under my wing and help you understand that there's a lot more at play. And
Right.
I think those are hard lessons that we learned and we often forget about because it's been so long since we've been tuned up.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that we'll progress to the point, speaking of the older IT generation that have been doing it longer than we've been alive, and they do it well, do you think we'll progress to the point where we can automate remediation and just build that into the process? Because right now, remediation is so separate from penetration testing, from discovering vulnerabilities in any way, shape, form, or fashion. Remediation is so separate. Can we just build that into the process? Is that, how far away? We've touched on this before.
I don't think so.
Yeah. See, now I think it's the future, and I think it's not the not so distant future.
I think it's potentially.
I think we have
I know
to.
you're asking Trey this question, right? But I'm going to jump in.
No,
there.
I'm
Please
gonna,
do.
no,
No.
I'm going to ask
Yeah,
other
please.
people too, not
Well,
just Trey.
my personal opinion
No
is
offense,
it's related to the OSI stack. I think you can automate it potentially at the OS layer, right? But as you get up in the application space, it's not directly OSI stack, but as you get up in the application space, much more difficult, right? OS has matured fairly well in terms of automation, in terms of updates, right? So therefore, it lends itself, I think, towards automatic remediation. And there are vendors, Microsoft, for example, that are doing a reasonably good job. They've had bumps up and down, but do a reasonably good job of that. And so I think that makes it plausible. But in the application space, I'm not seeing it. So
Mr. Santarcangelo.
Brother.
So let's say I've identified a service in my network, and I want to tell my software, hey, I don't need this service. I want you to turn it off every time you see it. How do you balance those business risks? I've had people on both sides of the fence. I have people like me who think that's great, but then I talk to people who do it in the trenches that are like, well, what if I kill something I'm not supposed to that breaks something?
Yeah, we've all done that. I mean,
Yeah.
right? We used to joke back in the day, if you wanted to figure out who owned the service, unplug it. Turn it off. Whoever screams,
I
But we
have
also
no idea what you're talking about.
we also appended that may be a CLM, a career limiting move.
Right.
I think that's the thing.
But we hate our job, so it's okay.
If you want that to work, then we've got to push to more standardization, and you have to have a pretty good environment that says, look, here's a list of things that we don't turn on, we don't use, and if we see them, we're going to shut them down. And you've got to make a pretty compelling business case up front for that. I like the idea that you're driving toward. I think it's, we tried it, a decade ago? So we're due to try it again. It failed spectacularly last time. We've made a lot of advancements since then, but I think those types of things work better when you have a more stable environment. I'm not sure we're there yet.
No, I agree. But so now Mike Murray was saying that us as security people, we're oftentimes perfectionists, right? We like to have the perfect solution, right?
Yes.
There can't be anything that's just like good enough. We suck at good enough. We're like, no, that's either secure or it's not. Like, there's no friggin' in between.
Zell is correct, and Zell is not correct.
Yes, exactly. So, but now let's go back to the automatic turning off of services, though. Like, what we're telling the operations team is we're telling them to kind of be on the same thing. Be like, you know what? Well, this is good enough. So some services are going to crash, and there's going to be a little downtime. But let's take the hit now, figure it out, and move on.
Well,
and is that good enough operations?
I desperately wanted to jump in because when you asked the question, I immediately went to remediation equals patch, but that's not necessarily the case.
No,
right?
Yeah,
I think we
services, configuration, and patches, third party, and operating system.
I would actually
ingress
modify
and
the
egress.
statement, and I actually
firewalls
think we could actually automate temporary containment as a first step.
I like that.
So that's kind of where my
there's a
thinking.
challenge, and it often splits down between academic and those of us in the field and in tactical roles. And to the line that I use to summarize sort of a Gene Spafford outlook on the world is additive security is not security. Right. Increasing complexity is not the way to solve it. Now, if you want a new bug to be fixed on your Windows or Linux system this afternoon, you are going to apply a patch. And we focus on that sort of block and tackle stuff, but the fundamental stuff is out of our control. And that's one of the challenges we've got trying to mature as an industry. That a lot of the fundamentals are better at the OS level, but a lot of the fundamentals still aren't. And as you said, you go up the stack, it gets progressively worse, and it's a real challenge. And, the best we can do to fix a problem now is probably to make it more complicated. I mean, there's certainly other approaches. If you don't need it, turn it off. Heavily automated cloud environments with portable workloads can really address this problem well. Once you reach that scale and that level of maturity, you never patch. You spin up new, fully patched instances.
The Netflix strategy.
And shift the load. And you never patch in production, right? And your test bed is identical to production and things like that. And that's a possibility. But from where the vast majority of the world is, from our personal laptops to the cigar lounge next door to Fortune 50s, they're, a long way from there. And we need to understand that baby steps matter. And back to your point, I've had this conversation with Adam Shostak many times, and he says it more eloquently than I do. But really, a fantastic goal is let's suck less tomorrow, right? I mean, not even let's be better tomorrow. Let's suck less tomorrow, just slightly less. Can we suck slightly less tomorrow?
I think that comes down to it's biting it off in chunks that you can actually swallow, right? Because
all right,
hey, no biting. I'd rather
dear.
suck it.
okay, that was not a really good way to say that, but it is.
It don't matter. Just don't bite it.
It just it's taken it in.
We're going there.
This is just going down here. I mean, we can look at it. We can break it down, right? We can look at it from a client-side technology, server-side technology, mobile technology, whatever the piece is you're trying to address, and you've got different levels of consistency in those environments that you can address, certainly from a containment strategy perspective, certainly from a cloud versus on-prem perspective. So there's a lot of I don't even know what I just said, but there's a lot of gray areas there that we could actually break down into different chunks and address the problem with different strategies.
So here's the thing for the group. Someone came up to me and said, well, I thought that your take on it was speaking of the vulnerability management. I was talking about that, and he said, if everyone did their jobs, why do we even need vulnerability management? Like, shouldn't people just be applying patches and changing the configurations to be secure? Like, why do you need vulnerability management?
I think this is just turning into the Paul Mike
Carlos
show.
has something.
Yeah.
You've been talking too much. Shut up for a while.
Yeah, I've been trying to get my word
Poor
in.
Carlos is trying to get a word in a job.
Come on, Carlos, bring it.
Yeah. I have a more simplistic approach. And just to quote Mr. Murphy of Murphy's Laws, one of his laws is professionals are predictable, but the world is full of amateurs. We all know how to fix stuff. We know we have to patch. We know that we have to keep an inventory of our services. We know that we need to have an understanding of what is in our network and how do we use it, and that it has to be documented, and that we have to have all of that stuff. But people don't do it. And the problem is that many times when you talk with security people, they'll try to put in a technology solution to the equation. They'll try, no, you need to do this. No, you need to have this system that will go in, modify this stuff. Dude, you need to move to DevOps. DevOps will fix everything. It will automate everything. Just a simple script. Oh, no, you need to buy this wristband box with a lot of lights that will go to each box, and he'll use WMI here and SSH over here, and he'll do what you want. No. We just need to get the fundamentals right. And a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't patch. They know they need to patch. It doesn't matter what blinky box they buy. Doesn't matter what fucking brochure they got in their pocket.
Man, Carlos never swears.
They're not going to get that.
He's getting
fixed.
passionate.
He's passionate. He's fired up.
Get the basics on how to operate a network and how to operate a professionally managed environment.
Egress filtering, never heard of it.
So why are we?
So you're talking about patching. So one of the some of the talks I'm doing lately, one of a pair of statistics that came out from the Microsoft SIR, I forget what that security blah blah blah. One of those big wordy Microsoft reports that comes out a few times a year. Not the latest one, but the one before I think it was that had it. They had some information on patching, and Microsoft has a little bit of analytics between the malicious software removal tool and Windows Update and Microsoft Update and all those things. Average time to patch Windows OSs from their telemetry, 9 months.
Sounds about right.
9 months.
That's the operating system to patch Office.
And it's not only that their
6
patches
years.
suck, but it's
That's why your old macro toys still work, because people are running
my
6-year-old. Now, granted,
Now, Jack, did you say operating system was 9 months? Now, is that desktop or server based?
that's everything that feeds back to Microsoft. So
Okay.
that skews heavily
Windows
towards
Update.
desktop.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it skews, but not exclusively, it does skew towards consumer and small business. Those that actually have completely locked down and segmented environments where nothing escapes the corporate environment and goes direct to Microsoft.
Okay. Yep.
And none at all, right? So there's some. So it certainly skews towards the home. But remember, at home, things ship with a default or steer you towards a default of patch automatically.
Yep.
So people are disabling automatic patching, and that's got to be showing us some results from the enterprise where people, patch quarterly whether they need to or not at best.
I wonder how that telemetry maps back against Google
not
Chrome.
only that, there's a mailing list dedicated only to patch management that you can sign up for. I forgot the name, patchmanagement.org or something like that. If you go into that mailing list and you start looking at the emails that are being sent there, one of the things that you will see is, oh no, my policy is I'll apply patches every 30 days.
Yep.
Oh no, my policy is 60 days. I'm looking at this mailing list, I'm going like, WPF, what are they saying? Then you see them debating about which patch should they break the rule for.
Yeah.
And they're going like, no, let's wait. Let's see what breaks. Let's see what noise we get out there. And all of a sudden, I'm going into some of the members and going like, dude, here's the proof of concept code for that vulnerability. No, but we have to wait before to see if it breaks something. No, it's being exploited. No, but our uptime is more important. And go like, what? It goes back to that's why I'm kind of joining Jag and Bitter train here. I've been seeing all
He's
this
a bitter
stuff,
aficionado. He loves the bitters.
and the way I see it is back to the rule. Professionals are predictable, but the world's full of amateurs. That's sadly what we're seeing out there. People are
Carlos,
not managing their stuff like they should be.
But do you think that asking them what the priority should be on those patches is even applicable if they are just really struggling with whether they should apply even critical patches? Like, why even bother?
You will see them go like, okay, I'll patch initially as a subset of servers. Cool. But then you see the rest of them, the small group that actually wants to do the job, that wants to roll their sleeves and get stuff done. And then there's the rest that are going like, no, I'll just wait for you guys to tell me how it went for you, and then I'll decide.
Yeah, that's
Very typical.
sadly one of the security mailing lists that some of us are on has turned into a patch management list again because of the challenges of Microsoft dissolving trustworthy computing and a bunch of other issues. But one of the stats, one of the sound bites out of the Verizon DBIR that came out a couple months ago, half of the CVEs exploited in 2014 fell within 2 weeks.
Exploit code was written within 2 weeks.
Half of the exploited CVEs fell in 2 weeks, within 2 weeks.
So CVE was announced, exploit code was available 2 weeks later.
Within 2 weeks.
Within 2 weeks.
And
those
my
that were going to
favorite
be
part is
exploded,
that when you
right.
look at any of the security mailing lists, they're talking about, how do I know if I have software X and Y in my network? And I'm going like,
So we're back to
Back to basics. Back to basics.
back to hygiene.
I think
right.
that's worth discussing very simply, right? I'm a big believer in virtuosity, right? Doing the common and commonly well. The bottom line is the fundamentals are extraordinarily hard to execute on. Anything you do, whether you're taking a mixology class or studying, any form of musicianship, they start with the fundamentals. They eat your lunch nonstop, and we're talking simple things, because excellence in the fundamentals is so hard. These people know how to patch. IT, they're like one of their primary incentive packages at work is uptime and availability. No questions asked. Patching helps, but patching also interrupts.
Is contrary to
and,
those.
and the thing is, at the same time, as security people, I think it's captain obvious for us to say, hey, dog, patch your stuff. That's important. At the same time, it's not what they're incentivized on.
Well, think of it this way, too, though. When you talk about fundamentals and all the things that you listed, and I'm a staunch advocate and completely agree. Here's my question every time somebody says this in security. Cool. So patching, what number fundamental is that? And how many fundamentals are there? And are they prioritized? And how do we measure against them? Because I've looked. I don't see it. Guys, I've started up and participated in certifications. I've tried efforts to try to define what the fundamentals are. We can't agree on a list of 10, let alone a list of 100. So it's nice to say it. I agree with it. I'm going to violently nod my head. But... we say that, so wink, wink, nod, nod, and then step away, and then lament again. Nobody did the fundamentals that we can't define, prioritize, or measure.
My thing. So I don't know how well this analogy is going to work, but I'm going to try it out on all of you. So when I think of how people do security...
Live analogies never work.
Well, exactly. So you're going to poke holes in it, but that's fine. So when I think of how people do vulnerability patch configuration management in their organizations, I think of it like... If you were to go to each floor of your house, you plug your vacuum into the same outlet every time, and you're only vacuuming as far as the cord lets you go. Over time, there are going to be areas that you miss time and time again. Over time, those are going to cause problems. There's going to be lots of dirt. There's going to be crumbs. There's going to be mice. Over time.
And that's how we get ants.
And that's how we get ants. That's exactly my point. And that's how we get ants. Dropping the mic. Done.
Walk away.
Yeah.
But
that's how I think people approach it. Like, I only have to vacuum as far as the cord lets me go, and that's all I have to do. And everything else is like, it's just a dusty
Maybe your house was optimized for that to happen.
Yeah.
But
to Michael's
it's
point,
a moving target.
One of the things
the house changes.
changes.
That was kind of my point. That what Mike was saying was your house.
One of the things that I like to point to as a fundamental, and it comes up time and time and time again, is having a complete and accurate inventory with something that resembles a network infrastructure guide. I'm not going to ask for a network diagram that's perfect, because that turns into a religious war, right? Is layer 1 and layer 2 on the same? Did you do it with paint? Did you spend? Did you hire consultants an hour? No. Look, Excel is fine. Excel has got to be the world's most widely deployed network management solution, because no matter what you've got, sooner, anything management software, right? Sooner or later it goes into a spreadsheet. But what do you have? And people are like, I can't fix everything. What do I care what I got? It's like, if you know what you've got, let's use that as a baseline. Start with knowing, let's say, almost everything in your environment. That improves your ability to do patching, do security, but it also improves your ability to do disaster recovery, to do backup, to do troubleshooting, to do diagnostics. I mean, that's a really fundamental piece. And that one I keep coming back to with audiences, especially less technical or less
is that a top
security.
5?
That's Sans put it at number 1, and well, now CSC or whatever they are called. And I think that's a good place for it. And, when I first saw that list, one is find all the crap in your environment, whether it belongs there or not. And number 2 is find all the crap running on the crap in your environment, whether it belongs there or not. And those are, at first, I was like, really? Do we have to be told this? And then I woke up and I was like, yes, as a matter of fact, we do. Not only do we have to be told this, we have to tell people this and explain why. Because even if you can't fix everything, if you have some idea of what your environment looks like, you get to choose what to fix. And I think that's because that has value. It's like logging has diagnostic value, it has uptime value, backup has disaster recovery value. But as much as I hate the brakes make cars go faster, no, brakes were put on cars to make them stop running into shit. But as a benefit, you can go faster and hit the brakes and slow down when you want to.
Thank you, Jack.
But no, they put brakes on cars so you stopped running into shit, because if you don't have brakes, you hit things. But having just driven through Boston and Providence, I'm not sure people understand that. But
so something that I hate to go meta for a moment, but I'm doing this.
Please do.
One of the things I love about what you just said, you weren't preaching. You were not even selling. You were solving other problems that they face. We spend a lot of time, and I don't want to yell echo chamber, but we spend a lot of time talking about how we know instinctively, or on some level in the top 10, top 20, to San Arcangelo's point, it's an important priority. But it's not what we think or how we feel that matters. It's making them more efficient, more effective. Right. We partner with IT, period.
Right. And Michael and I have gone back and forth on this one, on the chip and pin, chip and SIG, whatever. And every time we talk about the security of it, I come back to...
You mean the efficient transfer mechanism for online fraud?
Yeah, right.
I'm with you.
But here, I don't care. Forget security. Forget security.
Right.
Screw security. I want my card to work elsewhere, like in the entire rest of the freaking planet.
And I totally agree with you. That's worth $100 billion.
And I don't know if it's worth $100 billion, but the idea is if the money makes sense... and there might be an incremental gain in security, let's make it so that the users hate it less, and we can gain some security. So that is flawed. And what's even more flawed is the way we're implementing this crap is going to be a $100 billion expense, and we're getting the fundamentals, many are getting the fundamentals wrong. And so we're spending the money and not even getting the incremental gain we should.
You're going to get chip and sign. You're going to get people that are pissed about the fact it takes longer.
Oh, yeah.
And then all of those trains that you want to use when you go to Europe, or the things you buy in Amsterdam, they're just going to go to Apple Pay, Jack, and they're going to force you to use an iOS device.
Speaking of trains, did you know that the accelerometer on your phone could potentially be used to track where you go? So given the fact
that's a shock, really.
Yeah, given the fact that each metro system has a finite set of twists and turns and distances that accumulate a unique fingerprint, accelerometer data could be used to trace us. The research paper is titled, get this, "We Can Track You If You Take the Metro." How original. Yeah. Kevin, I wanted to get your take on this story. So even if Wi-Fi, cellular, GPS is disabled on my phone, these researchers are claiming that they can track where I go.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, these are known paths of the subway system, so it's not that hard to start mapping what the forces of your phone would look like when you start going that. But what I find a lot more interesting, it opens up a much larger discussion of what your phones can actually do when you start taking the features they have. And to just kind of go back to credit cards for a second, I've been hearing a lot of rumbling within the financial industry about how to defer or deter fraud, and accelerometers is one of them. About how you actually hold your phone can determine you as a person. So if someone were to say steal your phone, your Apple Pay iOS-based device, and it was tilted just a little different way as you're using it, you could actually infer that potentially, based on the research, that's not the person who owns that phone.
So you'd say it was not Kevin.
Yeah.
Whoa. Now, what's interesting is I saw a patent from Samsung that was a laptop, and the keyboard was shifted down, and you put your smartphone right in there. So it's just a monitor, keyboard, and you just put your smartphone. I mean, potentially, I hate to think of this, but that could be as smartphones pick up in technology, you know what I mean? In processing power,
capability. Yep.
But think about from a payment system. If my phone is authorized to do payments, now I don't have to enter my credit card anymore. I put my phone down and I can shop. I can shop with my phone. I can put it in my computer and it's done.
I'll tell you what. I just took a briefing with a company today that was explaining how they're using these devices, and I'll write about it. And if it's interesting, I'll post a link to you guys. But here's what kind of captured my interest in just the broad discussion of it. They talked about the ability to build a device profile and then to link the device profile. So let's say, right, most of us now, we have a tablet and a phone and something else. They can link all those things together and link it to your desktop based on the pattern of sites that you go to and things that you do, etc. But here's the kicker. It's anonymized. So it's linked, and yet they're not tracking who you specifically are. And yet if something goes awry with that profile, they can spot it instantly, and they're using it from an anti-fraud perspective. So it was interesting enough that I know I'm going to go come up with some other questions and ping them. So I guess if somebody's got questions on it, shoot them to me at Twitter, and I'll follow up with it and I'll write it up, because I thought it was an interesting take, specifically that they opted not to collect any personal information on it, but that they're using what we just talked about, all those features of the phones. But it's interesting because we got talking about how do we automate stuff, how do we make it better, how do we make it faster. And now here's one that's actually a great way to do it. And people go, oh, no, but I'm not sure I like that. Well, which is it, guys? Do you want to use the available sources of information to make it easier for people to do this and to provide better security that doesn't require a lot of effort from us? Or do we want to cry about all these things and then go lament that we can't seem to fix it?
We want to cry about them.
All right. Well,
and about how we can't fix them.
All right.
That's what we do.
It did seem
that
that
we
way,
do best.
actually.
Speaking of things,
Do you have an analogy for that, Paul, that we can go with?
It involves a vacuum cleaner and a fleshlight.
Surely it's got to have pictures of kitty cats for the.
No, this one has to do with like a cigar cutter. No, I'm just kidding. So
I feel like I'm going to lose my finger right now.
Just the tip.
So Apache Cordova flaw leaves 1 in 20 Android apps open to attack. Did you guys see this? This is a library from Apache that's apparently used.
No, actually, I didn't hear about it because it doesn't have a fancy logo and a theme song.
Yeah.
Touche.
Yeah.
Too soon?
Too soon.
No, please do tell me about it.
It's just
because I haven't heard about
They
it.
may be honoring the new rule where if it's not massively exploitable, it doesn't get a logo.
But it's 1/3 of every Android application.
1/20th.
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 5%? Is that mass?
5.6% of all apps in Google Play are prone to these exploits.
I'd say that's
Tell me more.
massively
Tell me
exploitable.
more. Yeah, tell me more.
Give them the volume.
It's
yeah,
got a
fair enough, fair enough.
CVE. Again, it's a library used, affects all versions of Apache Cordova up to 4.01. Apache has released a security bulletin confirming the vulnerability. However, it's up to all those people that make apps to go update their apps and apply the fix. Because this vulnerability
Yeah, that's
is
not going to
library.
happen. I'm not seeing that.
Not seeing that either.
No, and that also brings in the other implication of mobile OS versions being in control of the incumbent large mobile phone providers. If your phone's rooted and stuff and you've upgraded it, great. You're at Android 5.01 or whatever it is, but most people are not, right? And that's a significant challenge. So
You're left at the mercy of the application developer.
Well, you
in
are.
all of these things, on your phone, on your WordPress instance.
But you're also, the other issue is that you're left at the mercy of the telco provider, the mobile phone provider.
Telco providers are responsible for the vast majority of vulnerabilities floating on the internet, whether it's your edge device with their home modems and all that kind of stuff, or your handset, which, with Android, has to go through all the carrier testing, all the customization, all the extra junk before it gets pushed. That's not trivial. That's a huge population.
So in other words, it never gets pushed.
It does, just really slow.
Oh, yeah.
And only for a limited lifetime.
Only for a limited lifetime.
With planned out
Sounds like we're
obsolescence of
talking
what,
about
19
routers.
months? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's only you're only going to get 19 or 20 months on the high-end phones, right? If you're buying the phone if you get the phone that's free with the 2-year agreement or 1-year agreement, don't expect any update
for the first world population. Everyone else
gets
it.
whatever gets shipped.
But what
right?
happens if you're on the tail end of that? What happens if you go buy a phone and then tomorrow they're like, oh, by the way, you don't get any more updates for the entire lifetime that you have that phone? It's vulnerable.
I would congratulate you on being so optimistic that you were going to get them in the first place.
Wide-eyed optimist. Woo! Yeah.
I'm sorry, that just happened. I apologize.
So I don't know what we do about vulnerable applications in the.
No, you go find
You buy an iPhone.
the right way to or you could, or you go root the thing and run the latest code,
Except
and you're on your own, right?
The article says in April there was at least 25,000 iOS applications leaving iPhone and iPad users open to a man-in-the-middle attack in SSL.
Right.
Which, as we know, SSL does not have any problems as far as we're
Not
concerned.
at all. No.
None.
None that
No,
we can
and,
see.
and the flip side to rooting is how many people that root their phones actually understand what they're doing, and what is the trade-off, right? I want my phone.
Oh, the trade-off is you break it. I've got this problem right now.
All right, and so
Yeah.
what are you
It's
going to
still
give
illegal
up?
to do, though,
Are you going to is your USB tethering going to work this time? Okay. Oh, look, USB tethering work. Oh, the Wi-Fi hotspot's dead.
Or you're like,
I can't connect to my
Right,
carrier's network in Amsterdam.
Or,
right?
Exactly. You gotta be
like, or
hardcore.
like one,
You gotta
or
be
like one of
hardcore.
my friends, they send out multiple copies of the same SMS message, and there's nothing they can do about it.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes hundreds of times.
That's not disconcerting at all.
Nope.
Or like me, you open a support case to your provider and say, here's my cellular access point XML file. Is it correct? And I literally have that experience. They answered me, too, which was great.
That's
You know, I know we never talk about WordPress, but isn't this a lot like, I feel like we're mixing up when we talk about the D-Link routers and then we talk about WordPress plugins and all the problems there, right? I mean, these things keep coming around again. If you want something that's low cost and low margin, there's a certain tolerance for this in the marketplace. And maybe it's because we don't fully understand the challenges, right? I mean, I wish I could see the dreamy Trey Ford, but I'd probably be hypnotized, so it's probably better I don't. But, Trey talked about the fact we in this industry, and Trey and I have talked about this quite a bit personally, we need to do a better job of communicating things. So if there are opportunities where we can help people connect to the impacts of some of these decisions, that'd be great. But in the short run, like I guess our lifetime, what are the steps that we can follow then that make some of these things a little bit easier? And we've talked about the fact that, Apple's doing this and some of the other companies are looking at some of these gate checks and some of these other certain things that they're expecting to see. It seems to me like when we talk about these things and they kind of spin up and then we lament all the challenges around it, right? So what we're saying is we need more front-end opportunities to tamp some of this stuff down and some better controls around it from a structure and an environment perspective. I mean, there's a theme that's running through almost everything we've talked about today. And sometimes in that beauty comes, okay, so what do we start doing about it? At some point, talking about it's going to be great, but doing something and then pointing to that model and say, hey, look, in all those scary things we thought weren't going to work, yeah, that didn't come true. And oh, by the way, we also got these benefits, right? Jack just pointed to that with the brakes.
No, Mike. If people start fixing the things, we're not going to have anything to talk about anymore.
I'm sure there's going to be stuff.
We could talk about.
here.
I could talk
totally
about.
fine with that.
I'm too sober to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway because I don't have time to get that drunk.
You can give a vacuum cleaner.
How angry would you be to be the Maytag repairman in this industry? I mean, would that not be amazing?
That-
A properly
right.
resilient environment.
Yeah.
I would be really
so
angry to have
everybody
motorcycles to ride.
that doesn't know any better is writing stuff about the latest Ponemon cost of breach
He just took it there.
report data.
Oh,
Jack-
yeah, no.
Jack
just took it
there.
Hold on. This is science, Jack. It says the average cost of a data breach is $6.5 million.
This is a
One letter.
provably debunked lie. It
Pull
is
the crank.
marketing
Pull
at
the crank.
best. And if you are parroting what this group, for lack of a better term, says,
Motley Crue.
you are damaging the industry. Let me think of a really subtle way to put. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up.
Jack, tell us how you really feel. Don't sugarcoat it, my friend.
So Jay Jacobs, we talked about this on the show several months ago, did a blog
Yes.
post where he basically, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, his post is much better, but he basically said, okay, let's pretend this shit data is actually good data and then show what they do with the numbers and proved that they apply the maths wrong and get the answers wrong. And then the DBIR came out and said they're applying one number and we can give you a range of 38 cents to $6,000 a record. I forget the exact
I think it
range.
was 200, but
It's per record. Was like I think
Yeah.
per record it was like 38 cents to $200
$200
per
is a
record
massive range.
with, and that's the bulk of them. But there's some that fall outside that. So in other words, this number has been proven multiple times to be wrong. It's been proven wrong. And these things are vendor sponsored. And there's an axe to grind. And Jay has absolutely shredded the math behind it. So even if you accept the confirmation bias, selection bias, and everything that's wrong with the statistics, they still do the wrong things. So I'm very politely asking you, if you are thinking about writing, commenting, or speaking about the Ponemon numbers, shut the fuck up.
So, but what's wrong with the what's wrong? It's Ponemon and IBM, right? So I'm assuming IBM sponsored this probably to sell their security products. If I were to stipulate widely,
right. So here's what you do with reports that are vendor driven, and that could be from a vendor that's represented here on this table. You look at things that look like raw numbers. You look at if they tell you how they gathered the information, what the sample population was. We wandered around RSA with an iPad and asked people questions. And it's like, okay, well, that's garbage, but all right, if we assume that most people at RSA are, on the enterprise side, and we can make some assumptions, statistically insignificant, but potentially informative, right? If they tell you nothing about how they gather the data, if you can't figure out how they gather the data, if the sample size, if they're extrapolating from 48 respondents, if it's all self-selected and self-reported, it's a grain of salt. If it's telling you how bad people are at patch management and it's sponsored by a patch management vendor,
Danger, Will Robinson.
Right. And it's not saying there isn't good information in some of these reports, but it's, the DBIR is one we all look at, and there's remarkably little marketing in there. There's some, but they do it right? This is what we know about the world, and so we're going to tell you what we know. And obviously what they want you to do is think that they know what they're talking about and use them for incident response and also feed data in. And that's cool. The Mandiant Hem Trends report in past years has been really good. They're part of FireEye now, and in my personal opinion, it's not what it used to be. Some of these reports have drifted over time.
Mandiant M Trends report, ready? Russia. Speaking of which, Speaking of CIA.
I got
Speaking
CIA.
of which, Jack, this is yours.
Oh, yeah,
It's yours.
sweet.
wait, what did it land on? Oh,
I don't know. It landed on...
I can't read it. They need to have a jumbo one for Jack. Text
Insider.
is really big.
Insider.
Okay.
Inside her.
I
What?
like being
So Sony then, right?
Yeah.
So, Larry, tell us about the adult friend finder leak. This is something that could impact some people who use
Kegel's help.
Kegels, yes.
Kegel. What do Kegel exercises have to do with adult friend finder?
Leaks. Adults.
Okay.
Come on, keep up.
I'm trying to keep
But see,
up.
Paul, the leaks only happen when you get older. So, yeah. So
you wanted to
wasn't
be
there
here. I just want to remind you wanted to be here.
So the adult friend finder leak, the database popped, and they had a whole ton of records downloaded, which, by the way, I got a copy of, and it's not grep friendly at all.
It's a CSV, dude.
It's fucking horrible.
Everything's grep friendly.
No, it's not. No, it's not. No, it's not.
Well, you're not using grep, right?
No, I am. It's not grep friendly.
Oh, man.
The gauntlet has been cast.
It's been a while since you got picked on a little on the show.
It is.
dude, but,
You need some cat pipe cut orc, man.
No, but I'm using screen with grep. So
it always goes back to
Throw a little set in there. Come on.
you've got a problem and you use sed and awk, and now you've got three problems.
That's what she said. Oh.
Yeah. So, yes, there are the whole family and personal implications. Like, oh, my God, honey, I see that you were on Adult Friend Finder because your email was in the breach, and WTF.
But
really?
you say that wasn't me. That's just
Right. But...
Well, most of my friends and family know how to use grep, so they could probably find that info.
They could,
Oh,
and they probably can use it correctly while using screen.
Probably using screen. We should consult with our friends and family more. They actually know how to use the fucking command line.
I know.
Wow.
But
this is where you dump it into Excel and use Control F, right?
You can search across sheets.
No. You use highly complex macros.
Yeah.
That's what you do.
at least the ones that Paul sent to me.
Yeah.
You can create a pivot table.
But you start looking at some of the data in that dump, and if I remember correctly from looking at it, I'll have to go back and look at it, that IP addresses were recorded. what if those IP addresses are from your corporate? All right, so it's going to take some work to figure out. The easy one is, what happens if they registered for Adult Friend Finder with their corporate email address?
Is there a lot of that in there?
Yes.
That's
Yes,
awesome.
there was a lot
Yes. So one IP address, why were they surfing there from work?
Wait, how does Adult Friend Finder different from Tinder?
I don't know. I've never used Tinder or Adult Friend Finder, so I
I
honestly
would
couldn't
love to
tell
know
you.
how many
Hold
Tinder
on.
accounts
That was
were
the right
registered to
answer,
corporate
brother.
work.
Let me use
Corporate
Grep.
account.
Larry at securityweekly.
Dude, my email addresses are as bad as my domain names.
No, that's true. That's true.
Wildcard at, I mean,
Yeah.
really?
Which Larry and I were on a domain name purchasing acquisition rush a minute ago, so we've got a few more now.
Yep. I now own.
I really
I
think
now
that's
own my other computer is your computer.
That's kind of amazing.
That is pretty
Dot
cool.
computer.
I find that to be a terribly interesting data point when you're meeting tech folks asking how many domains they own. You'd be amazed how many people have a phenomenal amount of
Yeah, I
domains.
know, right?
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. And most of them registered while
Drinking.
imbibing.
As one
Yes.
does.
So domains are the cats of the tech world.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're like the crazy domain dudes as opposed to the crazy cat ladies.
Well, no, it's a little bit like a gambling habit. We're just hoping to strike it rich with one of them. Are we?
So
Yeah, Paul's not looking happy right now.
No,
we need to change the
Did I say
subject.
that out loud?
No,
Change
well,
subject.
if
We
I
just
can
need
jump
to
in here
change the
for
subject
a second.
quickly.
Go ahead, Kevin. Please
I was
save
going
me.
to say, let me play devil's advocate. So, Larry, is this breach worth $6.5 million?
Good question.
No. Because I just
Now-
downloaded it for free. Well, I allegedly downloaded it for free.
Think about it. So we just proved that all these numbers of these breaches make absolutely no sense. They're being thrown out of the middle of the air. Now we have a breach of real personal information who, to these people, are worth a lot of, to themselves, they have a lot of personal investment into them being not found using this service.
That's an
How do we
excellent point, Kevin.
contextualize that in a price?
In a price, yeah.
Yeah, so
Does
I-
it
for-
like
for-
buyer consumer confidence in Adult Friend Finder get lowered? And how do you
Yeah.
measure the impact of that, Kevin? Right.
So-
So
if you're
for
in-
me, that one would not rate the $6.5 million thing because the only thing that they're going to be able to grab is the Adult Friend Finder account and IP address and maybe name and location and that type of stuff, as
Interest
opposed to
people they've made contact with. There's no telling how much data they actually have.
right. And that said, no credit card number, no social security number, any of that type of stuff. And if they're doing it right, you can't log in and get that stuff either. So that may be a little bit different from some of the breaches we may consider. I mean, you think about some of the healthcare organizations that just got breached, and you think about other places that just got breached, like Target and
IRS.
all these.
Cough,
and-
cough.
Yeah, IRS that have that information that has some potential value to someone that's looking to engage in some sort of fraud.
But I find that very interesting because what is the value information to someone who doesn't
Yes.
understand
Yes.
what their email address on, let's say, Adult Friend Finder versus their social security number? I mean,
Right.
I've seen in the dark market, and I'm air quoting for all our non-premium subscriber video users.
So that you can be quoted on CSI Cyber next week.
Exactly.
Yes.
We've seen social security numbers go for less than $1. I mean, it's whatever. It's out there. But to someone who uses a service like this, who wants to be discreet, how much is it worth for them for their real email address not to be sold?
I think this is the problem that we run into everywhere else in the industry, right? Unless a regulatory body says, hey, this data set has value, PCI, HIPAA, whomever else. I think there's a certain level of asymmetry between what the consumer, the user, values their data at, even generationally speaking, what the executives value that data set to be, and then what we as their security practitioner advisor, expert advisors on staff, value that at.
Yeah, it's almost like we need a societal discussion about the value of data.
That's what markets are for.
But
That's what the dark markets are for. That's where you're going to get that value of it. Yeah, but think about it. No, but think about it for a second, because I'm not familiar with that site in particular, but I know people who go on and they do things in different places. And if you ask them, well, did you use your corporate account? Most of them, they didn't. And if you ask the people who use their corporate accounts or they use the same ones, did they care? Turns out, most cases, not really important to them. So when you start to say, how do you value it? What we find is that people who place a higher premium on that, they either do that research, they're very selective about these types of sites, or they'll take their own measures to obfuscate. Are they always successful? I don't know. That's worth looking at. But I think it's a fantastic question, Kevin, and I think I think Trey raises a good point. But where I stop short is I don't think that it's up to the government to make that decision. I mean, geez, that just has a lot of implications to it. But
Mike, the important question is who is responsible for the adult friend finder breach? Let's roll the attribution dice.
That is the right question.
To tell us.
Ready?
That is the
Drum
right
roll,
question.
please. And the winner is anonymous.
Nice.
Okay, that's pretty good. I like that. Yeah.
We haven't really addressed defending yourselves against things like embarrassing things like the adult friend finder thing, and that is to live
Step
your
one.
life so publicly that people can try to blackmail you. I think that's embarrassing. You should have heard what we did on episode 400.
Yeah.
Right? You think that picture's bad? Wait, let me grab my phone. I got this
naked
one.
on the hood of a car in Las Vegas, right?
That's right.
Muttering something about sheep. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there is a distinct lack of control of data that gets out there. We have no way to reel it back in, right? We just don't.
Carlos, any thoughts?
There's Carlos' thoughts. Thank you very much, Carlos.
Carlos went to bed.
Carlos went to bed. Yeah, and you know what? Before he needed the hoodie and the green screen because of the
That's
way
right.
he was front lit. I mean, he just needed the hoodie and
Very, very.
I think he's going to smart things on a timer. They turn off at a certain.
I think Carlos got so passionate that he exhausted his entire evening right there. Right. Anyway.
I don't. Does anyone have anything else? I don't have anything else.
Did I watch a summer?
I think
hit all
we've
the bases.
ranted
I
and
love
rambled
being
enough.
here.
It was nice having
So,
Joff in studio. I let Jack and Larry are back.
Yeah.
Trey Ford joined us in studio. We had Mike and not Kevin on the lines via Skype.
And Carlos.
We had a full panel.
Yeah.
Full house.
A full house.
Paul, the
It was
only
full
other one
house.
that I think that might be some interesting discussion would be my story number 5 on how do you handle disclosures. It was sort of
Oh, no, disclosures. We solved that years ago.
well, yeah. So I mean, this is a lot of sort of recap from Lumention on a bunch of disclosures that happened. For example, the electronic billboard maker with Dan Tentler said,
Yep.
hey, default passwords on VNC, really? And they replied with, sorry, we're not interested. And then 3 days later, billboards in Atlanta got hacked with pictures of Goatsy on them. Starbucks gift cards.
Oh yeah.
The Igor Homikov found that he could exploit a race condition and transfer funds from one gift card to another without it actually being deducted from the original, and then just start populating gift cards with funds.
Money.
And
I read that one.
went and tested them, and they worked, and he reported it, and they basically said, hey, yeah, how about we try to prosecute you for doing something illegal?
Yeah. Hey, I found a flaw in your system. Okay, we're going to call the FBI.
You
Thanks
know,
for that.
That response is so frustrating. I mean, on multiple levels. I mean, honestly, grow up. I mean, come back and say, thank you. We have a real problem we need to solve.
And that makes sense for those of us that have been around the block, have been watching this happen for a while. But, Kingdom Azuris had this, stages of grief, right?
Yep.
And, I think
I
it's
put it in some of my
I've heard it a bunch of
presentations.
places. Yeah, I've seen it in a number of places. I don't know who actually started that. But I think there is a certain amount of wisdom in that. You're going to feel some kind of way if you've never been notified. I mean, you really are. It's threatening. You generally go to PR and legal for air cover and feedback. And the law is not clear to help facilitate that. I mean, this goes full circle to the see something, say something, and making this conversation safe. And I think at the same time, we have a little dog food ourselves to eat where we need to step back and say, look, they're going to feel some kind of way if they've not been accustomed to this. If they don't have a disclosure policy, if you email security and you don't get an answer. There's a rite of passage that's real uncomfortable, and it's our job to be gentle and professional in communicating that.
That's a very, very, very good point, because you've got to bring them through. I've done this. Pen tests are a good example. I've done this in pen test reports where you have that response from an executive, and they go immediately into the stages of grief.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
And you start them off, and you've got to get them through that first depression, angry, sad kind of space.
Sure.
And try to get them into that conversation about acceptance. Mm-hmm. And that's it's a counseling process.
Mm-hmm. You know what helps in that situation?
Bourbon.
Liquor.
Yeah, pen test report writing, as I put on Twitter a couple weeks ago, is a fine balance between calling someone's baby ugly and telling them it will grow up to be prom queen.
I think
Poor
it's,
King.
I think it's very, very important in that discussion to put lots of positive affirmation into the process, as well as reporting the problems. You've got to get that right balance.
We talked about this before too. I mean, we're a piece of the puzzle. We sometimes forget that our field of view is limited. We see a lot. We're real excited about how smart we are, but we sometimes forget that field of view. And so
It's an awkward laugh everywhere.
we see something and we're very excited about magnifying it. Somebody says, "Yeah, okay, cool, thanks." We have no real insight sometimes to what these companies are going through, the pressures that they're under, what their schedules look like, where their priorities are not. And what we decide then is, well, they don't really match my priorities, and I'm pretty freaking special. So screw them. I'm going public with it.
We're clearly the only people that are that busy.
I think ending on the note of
and that really-
we're really special in a lot of different
Yeah,
ways.
we
is
are.
Good place to end. So
This
I
is the
wanted
one
to-
week I actually posted stories up to.
We'll save it for
My
next
feelings
for
are
next
hurt
week.
because I'm really smart.
Save them for next week. We're all special.
We're good enough.
Thanks to all of our special hosts here in studio and on the live
And
stream.
Carlos just came back just in
Carlos
time.
just came back too. The beauty is we're going to do the show again next week and the week after that and so on and so forth. So thanks everyone for watching. We'll see everyone next week.